Hi everyone, this is Tim Bauma. I want to give you an overview of the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework, the tool that I'm working on to map the trusted processes. And really, it's a Google spreadsheet, but it's coming together quite well. And I just want to give you a sense of what I'm working on here. But before I go into the details of the spreadsheet, I just want to give you a quick recap of what a trusted process is. I'm going to go to the consultation deck that I have here, and I'll very quickly just go through what the trusted processes are. So what we're defining is a series of identity management or identity trusted processes, and really very simply, a trusted process is an activity or set of activities that results in a state transition of an object from an input state to an output state. And what's really important here is defining not only the trusted process or standardizing the trusted process, but also defining the conformance criteria that enable that transition state from the input state to the output state. And what we're trying to do here is to formalize and standardize the trusted processes and the conformance criteria. So I just want to go very quickly. We've identified a whole series of what we're calling atomic trusted processes. What we've determined are the elemental processes that are typically in a business process or a series of business processes. Some examples here, and then we get into the identity assurance trusted processes. We've identified 8 of them. Credential assurance, we've identified I think 8 of them as well. And then what we're calling informed consent, another 4 processes there. So that's just very quickly, you can see that in the consultation deck. I want to bring you over to the actual spreadsheet that I've been working on here. So this is a Google Doc spreadsheet. Really, it's just a series of tabs and that actually have the trusted process definitions. So the first tab is just a README, just describing the worksheets that are within the Google Sheet, the README, the trusted process definitions, the business process service mapping template. This is where the hard work gets going, is the conformance criteria of the trusted processes, and then also we're doing a mapping between all the various guidance and standards that are out there, the NIST SP 163, the TBS standards, the UK Good Practice Guides, the European Union 1502 regulation, and so on and so forth. So the first thing I want to show you are the trusted process definitions. Again, going back to those diagrams that I showed you, each trusted process have developed just a unique ID, so we can actually do requirements traceability. The trusted process name. We've added a couple here for the generic requirements, like for an identity service provider, for example. The trusted process definitions, the input states, and the output states. So just going through very quickly, the ones that I showed in the diagram: identity resolution, identity establishment, identity validation, identity maintenance, identity presentation, identity credential binding, identity linking. Then we have all the credential ones, and then we have the informed consent trusted processes. So those are just the written descriptions. Again, we're finalizing that in a written report. This is just the first cut and paste out of that report. The next tab here is really what we're using to help vendors and actually program managers to look at their own business processes and actually start mapping what they currently do into the trusted processes. For example, identity resolution is all about how to uniquely identify an individual within your program. So you may have processes in terms of how you assign identifiers, what attributes that you use. You basically fill out this table here. Similarly, for identity establishment, that's the creation of an authoritative record. You may be creating an authoritative record or program record within your program, so really looking to map that to the process that you have in place. The thing that we've learned is that different programs, different services have different names. That's okay, but what we're trying to do is map it to a series of norms, namely the trusted processes, so we can actually then not only do an assessment, but actually map it to other guidance and standards. The next tab here is all of the conformance criteria that we've been developing over the past number of years. I've gone through all the documents with the spreadsheets, the documents that we've published, and just tabulated all of the requirements in relation to the trusted processes. As I said, there's a whole bunch of standard processes or standard or general requirements, so just map that into a general process. The qualifiers, in our case, we use level 1 through level 4. You know, the European Union uses low, substantial, high, so I just add the qualifiers there, and then the actual requirements here. So you go through and you see the requirements. And you go through identity resolution, again, mapping, putting all of the requirements or conformance criteria that we've developed. So again, I think there's about 200 conformance criteria in total if we go through that whole sheet. Where things get interesting is that we've been doing a mapping exercise going through all the existing guidance and standards that are out there. In particular, this worksheet has the NIST guidance. So we've gone through the documents. You'll see the reference there. That's just a short form for saying SB 863, section 4.2, and then paragraph 2. And then the qualifier is just a general requirement, and then what the actual requirement is, cut and paste from the guideline. So as you can see here, there's a hard mapping exercise of actually taking what's stated in the guideline and then mapping it to the trusted process. So that's the NIST one, and again, I think there's lots and lots and lots. You're free to go through and look at these cross-references and validate it against the original guideline that is published. I've just completed the EU regulation for EID, that's 1502. Similar exercise, mapping all of the requirements and mapping it to the trusted processes here. I've also done our Treasury Board guidelines and standards and our directive, same exercise here. I am working through the good practice guides from the UK. I haven't done that yet. There's some other emerging frameworks like the ID 2020 as putting together some requirements. And then what I'm doing is tabulating all the references of all the guidance that's out there. The Australians have their Trusted Digital Identity Framework as well. I'll probably be adding on that. I've got some stuff from the World Bank that I'll be looking at as well. The goal is to actually analyze all of those guidance and standards, try to map it back to these trusted processes, again, that we have defined here, and to validate them and to adjust them accordingly. We're not saying that they're perfect, but we think we've got a pretty good start on coming up with some standardized processes to which we can map all the requirements. The next exercise will be, once we've tabulated all those requirements, take a hard look at all of the requirements for particular trusted processes. So for example, let's say we're back up to identity resolution, for example, which is really all about unique information. We can actually go back to what NIST has to say about identity resolution. Let's go up here, see what they say. Identity resolution. So here are all the requirements about identity resolution in the NIST guidance. Personal information shall be limited to the minimum necessary to validate the existence of the claimed identity, for example. Minimum necessary to resolve to unique identity. Collection should be limited to the minimum necessary to resolve to unique identity. And again, you see that you see the same requirement repeated several times within guidance, and that's okay. Really, what we're doing is just trying to normalize it and map it. So if I go to the EU regulation, they have another their requirement. And again, this is from section 2.1.1. The low requirement, the third requirement, basically says collect the relevant identity data. Let's go to TBS. We have, let's go to identity resolution. We have a requirement here selecting sufficient and appropriate identity attributes to distinguish a unique identity to meet program needs in a manner that balances risk, flexibility, and allows other methods of identification where appropriate. And then going back to the conformance criteria that we've developed for our trust framework, let me just get to the tab here. looking back at what we have here, just up here, identity resolution. The responsible organization must specify the population or clientele for which its services are provided. So that'll be the next step, is to look at all those requirements or those statements mapped to a particular trusted process, try to tease out the common themes or difference of perspectives, and then actually adjust the conformance criteria for our purposes, for our trust framework, for the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework, but also to have a way to map it to the trusted processes so we can actually compare against all the other guidance around the world. So, this is it's an intensive process, but it's been very enlightening because it exposes different perspectives or different concerns in what the different frameworks are trying to do, or the different standards and guidelines. All the different perspectives are valid. It's just teasing out different assumptions and different ways of looking at the problem. So I invite you to take a look at the worksheet, this worksheet that I'm working on. It's going to evolve, especially over the next month or so. We're preparing a document that describes these trusted processes in detail, as well as an overview of the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework. But really, I'm planning to use this as the assessment tool when we actually do a detailed assessment for a jurisdiction. So you'll see within this spreadsheet here, not only do we have the requirements for the conformance criteria, we've done this with one jurisdiction. We'll do the assessment, look at the business processes, look what they do, decide whether we're going to accept it or not, and then if we do accept it, either add any conditions or observations, and that ends up into what's called the letter of acceptance that we're producing. So very, very methodical, nothing magical, but what we're trying to do here is making sure that we do a proper due diligence of a program, which may include various solutions and technologies, but really what we're trying to do is have confidence in these trusted processes using the conformance criteria that we've developed. So that's it in a nutshell. I'll leave it at that, and please have a look at the spreadsheet and the consultation deck, and soon the detailed overview will be coming. So that's it for now. So thanks for watching, and talk to you soon.